All right, well, up next we have a real pressure cooker on our hands. We are going to announce the first winner of the Jim and Ginette Munson Autism Leadership Award. Here to talk about the award and introduce the Munsons are Kim Ward and Margaret Whelan. Kim is on the CASDA Board of Directors and Summit Organized taxi driver and Summit Organizing Committee. She is also the Executive Director of an autism serving organization in Calgary. Margaret is one of the founding members of CASDA and currently serves as an active volunteer on numerous CASDA projects. So please give them a big hand, clap emoji, whatever it is you have to do to welcome them to the virtual stage.
Thanks, Michael. First, I want to welcome everybody back to day 2 of the summit, and I want to acknowledge that I live and work on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, as well as the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, and I make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and of gratitude. Day 1 of the summit was certainly powerful and thought-provoking. When I looked at my notes from last night, I was struck by a few things. The fact that 95% of workplace accommodations are requested by those without disabilities. I also really like that concept that we've heard, throughout day 1 in terms of addressing diversity with diversity as the guiding principle for developing any support or program. And finally, I think like everyone, I was moved by Jordan's call to action, telling us that now that we know better, we must do better when it comes to the inclusion of non-speaking autistics. There was a lot of great information shared yesterday, but rest assured we have an equally impressive agenda for today. It's my privilege this morning to announce the creation of the Jim and Ginette Munson Leadership Award to honor the tireless efforts of Jim and Ginette to improve the lives of autistic Canadians and their families. The award will be given out annually, starting this year, to someone who demonstrates vision, collaboration, acceptance, integrity, and who's open to diverse perspectives and has a track record for action and impact. These are attributes that Jim and Ginette Munson not only value, they personify. Before we announce the award recipient, I want to say a few words about Jim Munson. I could go on for hours, but I literally only have 1 minute. Jim retired from the Senate in 2021 after 6,426 days of public service. He was the impetus behind the Pay Now or Pay Later Autism Families in Crisis Senate report, which really highlighted the need for a national autism strategy. I personally met Jim about 8 or 9 years ago when he was touring our preschool program in Calgary. One of the students came up and took his hand. Although Jim had a really tight schedule and people were waiting for him and giving him one of these, Jim created the time and space to interact with the child. Flash forward 2 years later, I saw Jim in Ottawa at the summit reception. As soon as he heard I was from Calgary, he asked about the child. I don't know how many people a senator meets in a year, but Jim remembered the boy's name and the details of the time he spent with him in the classroom. And each and every time I've met Jim over the years, he's asked about the child. He's many things, but Jim is first and foremost compassionate. He's been a champion for the autism community for over a decade, and he has distinguished himself as a caring and tenacious advocate. I'm now going to turn it over to Margaret Whelan to say a few words about the amazing Ginette Munson.
Thanks, Kim. I'm very pleased to be able to say after 15 years of knowing Jim and Ginette, I now count them as friends. And I don't think they would disagree with me if I said that although Jim may be the band leader and has been the band leader for all of us as we have moved forward on an autism national strategy, in fact, Ginette has been the power behind the throne. She has been a strategist throughout, a mentor for all of us who have been involved at the leadership level with CASDA and many who've been members of CASDA for a long time. And I think that one of the things that has been so important to me is that when we first started, there were 6 people who thought we should get CASDA going. We were colleagues technically, but we did not know each other. And Ginette hosted and facilitated the very first strategic planning session for CASDA among these 6 people. And as a result of that, we left that meeting convinced that not only could we work together, we could find a way to bring leaders across Canada together for the singular cause. And she has continued to be the mentor for every person who has ever wanted to move forward on the national autism strategy and has had a passion for autism. She encapsulates leadership, as does Jim. And so it's my very great pleasure to turn the camera and the microphones now over to Jim and Ginette.
Well, this is very humbling, and we're really honored, aren't we, Ginette?
We are very honored and grateful.
It's one of those things. It's been a long journey, but we still have a long journey to go. And with this award, we've never met Whitney, but we're meeting her right now, and it's I'm just got a lump in my throat. It's so important to announce that the first winner of the Jim and Ginette Munson Autism Leadership Award, the 2022 recipient, is Whitney Hodgins from Manitoba. And Whitney, it's in recognition of your leadership and impact in advancing a better Canada for autistic Canadians. Congratulations. We're so happy for you.
Thanks. It's an honor.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really big honor to be the first recipient of the Jim and Ginette Munson Autism Leadership Award. It really is.
I know that we can't be together in person, but I can't wait for the time that we can really sit down and have a good conversation. But I'd like to get to know more about you. I know that you're a university graduate and you're an advocate and you're an aspiring politician. You have your resume is so long and so lengthy, and your advocacy is just stunning. Perhaps can you tell us just a bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I was born in Manitoba in a little small town. I grew up in Deloraine, Manitoba, and then I was diagnosed with autism at age 14. And at that time, it was around the mid-2000s, and unfortunately, a lot of the supports at the time that were offered, I had already aged out of. So we had to get really creative with how we were going to address supports and resources for us, and the additional challenge of growing up, in a rural community was even more of a daunting task. But at age 16, that's kind of where the final nail in the coffin and frustration kind of hit me as a person, because being diagnosed at 14, it's not like you grow up and your parents tell you. You're sitting in the room with a professional that tells you to your face, this is what you are diagnosed with, this is the resources you have. So you're very self-aware of what's going on and the issues that you're being challenged with. So at 16, I decided that I wanted to make change. I didn't really have a clear concept in my head what that change would look like, but I knew that change had to happen, and I had made the first step forward to doing that. And that kind of started with mental health advocacy in my community and in my local high school. And then as time went on into university, I stepped into student politics and ran my very first election there. And then that's when things kind of went upwards, because I was invited to consult on implementing accessibility legislation and how that looked for the campus, and got to fight for students on some big pieces of legislature throughout that time. Mm-hmm. And then post-university life, the pandemic hit. And so all those challenges and things that we hadn't brought up yet came to the forefront in the pandemic. And so here I was again as an advocate, this time as a chairperson of a provincial organization called the Manitoba League of Persons with Disabilities. And we advocated for vaccine prioritization of vulnerable populations. So this is people with disabilities, people in congregate settings, people with autoimmune conditions and other complex health needs. I also fought against bills in legislature during that time. So that's pretty much bringing us up to current.
Yeah, but I noticed in the nomination process, there were a few words that that are certainly part of your vocabulary in terms of acceptance and of being openness, and also personal strengths and integrity. And you're a person of action, of immense action. This taking on politicians in the Manitoba legislature, it's something which is close to my heart, because politicians have to be taken on each and every day, as you know. But what struck me there was that you talked about, and I think this could be part of a national autism strategy in terms of pursuing it, when you talked about no scholarships for persons with disabilities. There's always something there, grants for persons who are studying about disability, but no scholarships. And I think that whether it's Brandon University or any university across the country, this could be part of a curriculum, or could be part of the program. I think it's very innovative what you've been talking about.
And, you know, we have faced challenges, like not just people with autism, but people with any kind of disability. There are challenges when accessing post-secondary education. And, you know, whether it's accessing textbooks with Braille, or, you know, getting access to that tutor you really need for a course you're struggling in. Those things ultimately come out of the pockets of the students, and there's not enough grant money or scholarships or bursaries to help with that. And so having somebody in a position of need like that, it does kind of damper things. And during the pandemic, we recognized that need as well, and we created our own COVID-19 hardship grants specifically for students with disabilities, in collaboration with the Canadian Federation of Students Manitoba, to try and alleviate some of that pressure for people living with disabilities during the pandemic. That was the very first time that I think there was a grant offered to students for BU for sure, that really address that need for technology supports and supports in general.
I just been thinking here and listening to you. You're, my understanding, a great public speaker, and delivering the message is a very important thing. And you're showing that to the summit today, because I think everybody has to hear your message. What do you think is the secret to your own leadership? I'm asking that question because you talked about tough times as a child. But you came out of that as a strong woman, a strong leader. So what's the secret? Perseverance.
So there's a few things that pop into my head. So there's critical key points in my life that really turn things around. So the first one is my mother. She was my advocate when I was growing up, and nobody, and I kid you not, nobody will ever understand that as deeply as a parent with a child with a disability. Is they become the advocate the moment their child gets diagnosed. And so having to watch my mother go through that. And then she watched me struggle, and she said, look, I'm going to give you the best piece of advice ever. And I was like, what's that, Mom? And she goes, you have a choice to make. You're at a fork in the road. You either decide to listen to what society has to say about you and your condition, or you can prove them wrong. You can just blow them out of the water with whatever you have to say and do. And as you can see today, I chose to prove them all wrong. But, you know, there was also, there's actually a story about legislature. So my very first time in legislature, I actually received a text from a family member of mine saying that my nephew was diagnosed on the spectrum, literally 5 minutes before I hit the stage to speak to politicians. It was, you know, that kind of lightning bolt moment where you just get struck and you're like, wow, I have another choice to make. And for me, it was kind of like that realization that if you don't do anything today and you don't ramp things up and you don't create that change and you just kind of lull yourself around, my family member, my nephew, was going to relive some of the hardships that I went through. And so my nephew, in part, kind of motivated me a bit more. And he's always the one in my back corner. So whenever I have a video shoot or something, he'll be in the back seat going, are we there yet? Like, thought we were supposed to be there already. So he's kind of my big motivator. And then additionally, there have been people in my life that have challenged me. And so I always have to give a shout out to those people, the challengers, or as some modern people call them, the haters. They always challenge me. And it's something that I think a lot of people don't give them enough credit for, because they're always holding you to account. And so, you know, so it's those three kind of people or groups that have really inspired me, changed the way that I became a leader, how I address certain things. It's those kinds of people that really turned me into the leader that I am today.
Wow, congratulations. I'm awed by your incredible self-awareness as a leader, and the fact that you're crediting, you know, the important key role of a mentor. In this case, it's your mother, as in the cases of so many families who live with autism. It's extraordinary. And as you, the other thing, and it was on my mind and Jim's mind as we read your bio, is the obvious call to action, and you moved every time there was a call to action. There you are, you know, moving to the legislature. And then I liked your last point, because somebody's challenging you to accountability. And that pretty well sums up very nicely, you know, leadership. And what an honor that for this first year of somebody awarded with this, that it's someone of your caliber. It's extraordinary. So congratulations, Whitney. It's
Thank
beautiful.
you.
And with that in mind, CASDA and Ginette certainly has been a bridge builder in dealing with CASDA and helping create CASDA. And I've been along for the ride from the very beginning. You know, we're all inspired by somebody. And I do remember, for me, when I was appointed to the Senate, I thought, what can I do in the world of disability? I hadn't focused on autism, but it took one man with one sign in front of the Centennial Flame who sparked me into action in terms of the report on Pay Now and Pay Later, and into the Autism Awareness Day bill. And I needed a focus, and it was just so important. And we do have our own personal stories, but this is your story today. And I'd just like to ask you, in terms of CASDA itself, where do you see our future going with CASDA? What would you like to see happen?
So I definitely believe that the National Autism Strategy is a must. As somebody who has grown up and navigated these systems that are supposed to help us, they're at a loss because governments are struggling on how to deal with the complexity that is the autism spectrum, because it's a spectrum. No two people are the same. And so when you're challenged with how to address these very specific needs for each and every individual, I believe the National Autism Strategy is a good step forward in that. We've also seen the introduction of a federal bill that I believe is Bill S203, if I'm thinking off the top of my head.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it's not the National Autism Strategy, but it is holding the government to account and setting those deadlines in place to actually do something. So it is a step forward, but it's not as good as a strategy like the National Autism Strategy.
Yeah, we can't afford to wait any longer, I think, in this community. Pay now or pay later, and it's much later, much later. The children we are talking about, and you use the words aging out of a system, sometimes there's bridges built to nowhere, because it has to encompass adults. It has to work in a housing strategy. It has to work in an employment strategy. And from my view, just to get my 2 cents worth in on the National Autism Strategy, which we all are pushing for, it's gotten real late, and we can't wait for the next election for the implementation of one. So with all of this taking place, and Ginette, I think we wanted to explore the part of what do you think for the next time around, right?
Yeah. Well, what we were discussing is, you know, sometime next year at about the same time, someone else will be selected to be awarded with the Leadership Award. And so we're curious as to what you would say to that person.
As the person winning the award?
Or anybody who's, well, I mean,
Or-
people are winning the award or just putting their names forward for this particular leadership award. Yeah.
Oh, that's a tough one. I would say that you need to have a big heart going forward with anything that you do, especially when you take up a cause such as autism, and recognize that people are watching you. Even the future generation is watching, and if you're going to get into something like this, when you go and do something like this kind of cause, you need to be doing it for the future and not for really the past, right? So something to keep in the back of your mind whenever you're doing this kind of hard, emotional, laborious work is you always have to be thinking about the future.
And before we go with our conversation today, and I can't wait to meet you, as I say, in person in Manitoba and elsewhere in the country, or maybe as a senator, or maybe as a member of parliament, or maybe as a cabinet minister. You know, there is a road and there is a journey for everyone, but you know, there's more than just advocacy in your life. You talked about rocks. Rocks that you always picked up rocks as a child, and you brought rocks home. It's just like I pick up driftwood off a beach, and there's so much driftwood in this house that Ginette doesn't want to see any more driftwood. But anthropology and so on and so forth, for Whitney Hodgins, as your own life, there's other things that must be going on too besides advocacy.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time essential employee right now. I'm actually going back to school because unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it threw a huge curveball in everyone's plans, I'm sure. But for me, it gave me the opportunity to really think things through. And it hooked me up with a lot of different projects, partnering with many different community organizations. And throughout that time, it also led me to finding out that I'm actually really good at HR. So I'm going back to school April, so literally tomorrow. And I am going back to school in human resource management. So I'm going to be getting some more education there. But otherwise, it's, you know, it's advocacy, working, and going back to school.
Well, listen, it's really wonderful to meet you virtually. I like the ring of this, and I hope you do too, because in terms of the Leadership Award, and to emphasize to everybody in the summit about the idea that it's recognition of your leadership and impact. I think that's important in advancing a better Canada for autistic Canadians. So congratulations to you. We're very happy for you, and we can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah. My little bit is to say how extraordinary for CASDA, particularly because of the focus on young adults and the needs for support, to see someone being honored, someone who with a true lived experience with impact, as Jim says. It just, you bring incredible credibility and therefore hope and inspiration to the large community. And so congratulations again, and it'll be extraordinary to meet you in person.
Thank you. It'll be exciting to meet you guys too. Like, I don't get very many visitors because of the pandemic, but when the pandemic slowly comes to an end, I would be more than happy to meet both of you.
We'll be at your doorstep, that's for sure. Thanks.
Okay.
Nice meeting you, Whitney.
Good luck at school.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Elizabeth Plouffe. I'm the Chief Minion for Spiro Careers Canada, and we are focused on building solutions for the autism employment situation, for the crisis. I'm here today on behalf of the CASDA committee to talk to you about the Jim and Ginette Munson Award and what that's going to look like. And Kim Ward and I had an idea. Why don't we profile the intelligent, artistic, creative individuals within the autism community who create fantastic art? I happen to know Aiden Lee, so I put Aiden forward as one of the first artists to be profiled as part of the event. And I just wanted to read you a little bit about the piece of art that Aiden's sharing with us. So for Aiden, he is an abstract painter, teacher, and human advocate. He was born with multiple diagnoses, including autism, ADHD, and anxiety. One of the challenges he faced made it difficult for him to communicate and express his thoughts and feelings with those around him. That is when he found art. For the first time in his life, he was able to express himself fully, and it changed his life. I use different styles and mediums to create bright, bold colors with a blend of different textures, which inspire the mind, body, and soul. In 2017, Aiden started the initiative aimed at volunteering to teach and inspire 150 students for Canada's sesquicentennial. Since then, Art from the Heart has grown to huge leaps and bounds. He has brought the power of art to over 3,500 students all over Ontario and has expanded his classes to a virtual setting to include communities worldwide. Aiden and his parents run Project Autism, which is a community-based program, and they include art and creativity programs for autistic individuals and families. The piece that you see up on the screen, it's called Gold Linings, and here's Aiden's story around how this painting was created. When I was younger, I never understood the saying, clouds have silver linings. I mean, literally means that the bright outline along the cloud's edge occurs when light is diffracted by cloud droplets. But to actually see this lining, it's quite hard. The meaning is that when times are bad, always keep your mind on the possibility of it getting better. It's about enduring and getting through, hoping for a good opportunity. For me, it's all about colorful dreams, ideas, and goals. These all have gold linings. Gold linings are reflective, not dependent on diffracted light or on hope. It's about you, your hard work, your dedication, your colorful dreams. You can achieve anything if you keep moving forward. This is what this painting is telling you. You are the gold lining. I think this is especially appropriate for what Whitney has brought to the table and is our first recipient of the Jim and Ginette Munson Award. So congratulations, Whitney. I hope you enjoy your piece. Kim and I are working busily on getting it shipped out to you, so we'll have to connect on that. But our hearty congratulations, and I hope you enjoy this piece. And you are a gold lining. We appreciate everything you've done. Thank you.